Our first question is going to come from Scott Wright from the Oklahoman. Go ahead, Scott.
Coach, I'm sure your sentiment about being ready to play extends to your team. How did they react to the news last week, and have you seen them be able to refocus once they got past the initial shock of having the game postponed?
They've had so many changes over the last few months. I don't think it affected them much at all. I know that they practiced really well last week, and then we gave them Sunday off and then today off, and then we'll start again on Tuesday.
But their attitudes have remained good?
Yeah, I can't really tell any difference, over the last few months with all the different changes. They've seemed to handle them well, and all I go off is practice, and their enthusiasm in practice has been just fine.
Thanks, Mike.
Uh-huh.
Our next question comes from Bill Haston of the Tulsa World. Go ahead, Bill.
Mike, Kansas -3 on turnovers. Iowa State gives up big plays in the return game. K-State's 1 of 11 on third down. So coming out of as I understand it, you had a pretty extensive scrimmage on Saturday. Coming out of that, how much more peace of mind do you have with regard to the little things that hurt a lot of these teams on opening day?
I feel good about where our team is. Their enthusiasm in practice has been excellent over the last few weeks. As a coach, you're always concerned about the first game. I think you concern yourself with discipline, special teams play, and turnovers, and those are the areas that we try to stress in preseason, and hopefully it'll benefit us on Saturday.
Are you satisfied where you stand, or have you gotten enough reps, or do you ever get enough reps in August or the preseason with regard to special teams?
We've had more than enough reps this preseason based on the delay and the format with the changes that have been made. So we should be more than ready to play on special teams, in my opinion.
All right. Thank you.
Our next question comes from Jason Elmquist of the Stillwater News Press. Go ahead, Jason.
Hey, Mike. We found out last week that the wide receiver transfer for Washington State would have immediate eligibility. I know he kind of came in late into fall camp. Do you see him having an immediate role or some type of ability to play early on?
Yes, I would expect him to get an extensive number of snaps in Saturday's game.
How much do you think it helps that he kind of came already from a similar system with the Mike Leach offense, kind of, which is what your offense is built foundation on?
Well, actually, Leach built his offense off ours, but either way, the terminology is relatively similar, and so it did help him in his adjustment to Oklahoma State.
All right, thank you.
Our next question comes from Jenny Carlson from the Oklahoman. Go ahead, Jenny.
Hey, Mike. A couple of the teams we saw in the Big 12 who struggled over the weekend, Iowa State and Kansas State, are a couple of teams that seem to have a pretty good home field advantage. You know, a lot of loud fans, rowdy. I think some people would say the same about what you guys have in Stillwater. How do you guard against, just sort of the difference that it's going to be? Do you talk to your guys at all about the fact that it will be different and how they're maybe going to have to guard against, sort of a not having that same level of energy?
It's obviously going to be something new for everybody. So our players have to be able to self-motivate, rely on the enthusiasm from amongst the team and coaches, and focus on what's happening on the field. I don't think there's any question that teams use a home field advantage to play to the crowd, and we're not going to have that this fall. So hopefully they can self-start and motivate themselves throughout the game.
Our next question comes from Chris Becker from the O'Colly. Go ahead, Chris.
Coach, with this game being pushed back an extra week, how has that extra week of preparation impacted the team?
Well, it gave us 3 more practices. We've had so many practices that we gave them off on Friday, and then we gave them off yesterday and today. They're just tired of practicing, in my opinion, but the preparation in this sport and the physicality is so important that we have to continue to push through it. But we have allowed them to have more days off just recently because of the pushback of the schedule.
Our next question comes from Barry Trammell of the Oklahoman. Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, Mike, the crazy nature of this season, have you guys as a staff talked about how that could lead to more upsets and what you can do to prevent it? What we saw with Iowa State and Kansas State, not necessarily Kansas, but just some really unique results in the first week in what's going to be a kooky season.
Well, I didn't hear your question. I mean, I heard what you said, but I didn't hear your question.
My question is, have you guys talked as a staff about what you can do to try to avoid the same fate as some of these other teams?
I think it's just preparation, and there's been a level of how physical teams want to prepare, what your limitations have been based on the virus back and forth. And so we tried to push forward. We've tried to push hard. Dealing with the emotions of the players and continual practice and no games has been much different. But we've pushed hard and continued to do everything we can to try to get our players in a position to where they can play an up-tempo physical game to start the season.
Have your practices been as the normal amount of physicality? This became a talking point after that Navy game when it was clear Navy wasn't ready to play. Have you guys been as physical as ever in preseason camp?
Yes, we have. We haven't changed.
Our next question comes from Robert Allen of Triple Play Sports Radio. Go ahead, Robert.
Coach, I want you to know I've been listening. I'm not stupid, but I'm going to ask this question a different way. What advantages maybe were there for your team to have the extra week versus not? And I'm thinking in the lines of maybe like a Tay Martin getting a little more time, the offensive line. What areas did you see maybe grow in the last week that you feel better about going into this Saturday than maybe you would the week before?
We've had a few players that had minor injuries that we should get back this week. It was an advantage. Certainly with Tay, another week of practice is an advantage for us and him as well. We're dealt a hand, and we try to make the best out of it. It doesn't make any difference because there's a lot of uncertainty that we can't control at this point. And so we tried to take advantage as much as possible as we could with the extra week, and then also give our players enough days off where they felt like they could recover from their body through the preseason and try to put them in the best position possible to play a game.
You're breaking in a new placement kicker. I know you've been asked several times about Alex, but what do you like about Alex Hale?
He seems to have a really good demeanor, carries himself really well at this point. I'm sure he'll have some nerves being the guy for the first time, but overall, he's played really well. He's competed, and I look for him to kick well throughout the season.
Thanks.
Our next question comes from Garen Emig of the Tulsa World. Go ahead, Garen.
Mike, it sounds like Oklahoma really had to sweat out even having the right number of players to get their game in Saturday against Missouri State. Where do you stand as you start game week with regard to just the numbers on your roster?
Well, we're at the same numbers we've always been. We carry 130 players on our team.
But with regard to the COVID test results, are you having any kind of a quarantine issue as you go into the week, or is everyone in pretty good shape?
No, I mentioned this last week. Our medical group was on the cutting edge with what they did, and it just happened that Doc Ivan's plan was essentially flawless and perfect from the fact that we brought him in as early as possible. We gained tons of information and learned throughout the process. We're sitting here at 0. I mean, he's been unbelievable. I mean, the guy should write a book on how to handle the virus.
How fortunate do you feel to be at that number, given all of the issues that other coaches are facing right now? Is that really starting to hit home now that you got a game week to think about?
Well, we feel very good, and as you know, I mean, it can change. We're testing 3 times a week. We still have to test again Wednesday and Friday. So you asked me where we're at now. I gave you those numbers. Can they change? Sure. Will they change throughout the season? I'm sure they will. But my point is the way that his approach and the way it was handled within our athletic department has been fabulous, and we're very thankful to be in this position for a lot of reasons.
Sure.
Obviously, the players want to play. They want to compete. Nobody wants to miss a game. Coaches don't want to miss a game. And we have helped contribute to eliminating a lot of virus in Stillwater and in the state, which is maybe a bigger impact than even playing in the games. So I was just very proud of our medical staff. And, as I continue to mention, Doc Ivan and the people, Scott Parker and John Stem in our building, there were times I disagreed with them and they told me that this is what we need to do. Mm-hmm. They were right. They were dead on. And for that reason, we've contributed to elimination in our bubble, for lack of a better term, of the virus. And at this point, we're sitting here at 0. So their plan worked and it was flawless.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question comes from Jacob Unruh of the Oklahoman. Go ahead, Jacob.
Hey, Mike. Last week, Calvin Bundage talked about how he had people telling him he wasn't going to probably play football again. What were your expectations of him coming off the surgery?
Anytime you're dealing with an injury of a contact sport with a player in their back, there's a lot of uncertainty. And so I don't know that anybody can predict what direction that will go. I was hoping that Calvin could come back and play for him more so than the team, just based on, for a coach, it's just tragic when you see a young man that can't compete anymore if he still wants to play the game. And I'll be honest with you, we haven't had a lot of luck with back injuries. One fact, over my 31 years in college football, you just don't see a lot of guys come back with that type of injury. Now, how severe they are, I don't know, because with back injuries, it's hard to really tell. But I'm really excited for him. His attitude and his posture and demeanor over the last 2 months has been fabulous. He's smiling again. So I'm just happy that he gets to get back on the field because he loves to play football.
Is there still some cautious optimism there as he goes into the game just because of that injury?
As with any injury, but specifically when you're dealing with a back, you just kind of hold your breath. I was holding my breath with him until I saw him get into some tackles and contact in practice. And then I was hoping that he would be there tomorrow and kind of push through it. And he's done well. So you're always a little cautious just based on an injury to a player. And hopefully it'll hold up and he can play this season. And it's really kind of changed his life just getting back on the field.
What kind of role do you anticipate him having now with Malcolm and Amon and guys like that around too?
We play 2 deep on defense, and he'll get as much football as he wants. He'll be in there playing and competing right from the start.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question comes from Caden McFarland from KJRH in Tulsa. Go ahead, Caden.
Coach, on your opponent this week, are there a couple areas where you expect them to be especially strong or an especially good challenge for you guys?
Well, they've got wide receivers that can go up and get the ball. They put them in the inside slot position, and they do a nice job with play pass and double moves and such. I would expect them to attack us in that area. Defensively, they've replaced the number of guys, but they've got backers that can run, and their nose guards have played well. So I would expect them to be ready to play, but those are some areas where we know who they are based on the returning players from last season.
Our next question comes from Bill Haston of the Tulsa World. Go ahead, Bill.
Mike, this will be the 16th time you have faced Tulsa in your overall life at OSU. So, I mean, you faced TU now more than you faced Nebraska. So, I mean, what is your where does the Tulsa series stand in your personal history with regard to, whether you've enjoyed it or whether it's been an important part of your run at OSU? How do you view the Tulsa series?
Well, I think it's a really good series. We had this discussion a few years ago with Coach Holder and I, and making a decision on what direction we wanted to go with a long-term series with Tulsa, reopen the game. I think it's a really smart move for a lot of reasons. I think it's good for both fans. I think it's good for the state. It's a good game in my opinion, and one that people locally can enjoy.
Mike, it'll be a month ago tomorrow that I think it was 23 women from one sorority house at Stillwater tested positive. At that time, did you think, holy cow, the odds of us getting through this aren't good? Or was your response to that pretty measured and you had faith in your medical people to get you through it? Because, I mean, your report today versus, what was going on a month ago, it's pretty remarkable.
I think people have to understand you're going to get an on-campus number with the virus, and then you're going to get a number that's in our bubble. And there's some confusion on those numbers based on our players have been educated since the month of May for the most part to protect themselves and how to improve. And through time, they've grown and have improved. That's why I mentioned earlier the plan that our doctors had to bring people in as early as possible so we could learn from this and teach and educate has been fantastic. I would say that over the next few weeks, you're going to start to see on the campus where those students will learn just like our players learned. We're a few months ahead of them because of the time of coming in. So the positives that came from on campus never really concerned me from a standpoint of us playing football.
Right. One more quick thing. What is Gundy doing on a daily basis, Mike, in the program?
Say it again.
What is Gunnar Gundy doing on an everyday basis? What's he able to do for you this year?
Well, Gunnar's in school. Gunnar's a student, and he is training and just like he would any other year. But he's just a student.
But he's not taking snaps, or he's not he's not on the field with you?
No, he's not on the field with us.
I see. I got it. All right, Mike, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Our next question comes from Barry Trammell from the Oklahoman. Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, Mike, we talked to you last Monday, and we talked a lot about the Tulsa game, and then I guess it was the next night we got the word. How far out did you know, hey, this game may not happen this week? How much lead time did you have on knowing about the delay? Was that a decision you were involved in? How did you feel when you heard the news they were pushing this thing back?
Oh gosh, I didn't know. I wasn't involved in any of that. I just had gotten a text message that the game was postponed and trying to reschedule for a week later. I wasn't even involved in discussions.
Did you understand the reasoning behind it?
I haven't even been told. I've just heard what you guys have. Nobody actually even told me the reason, other than I was assuming it was because of the virus, but I never asked and nobody told me.
All right, last couple questions. Our next question is going to come from Scott Wright from the Oklahoman. Go ahead, Scott.
Mike, you and your players alike have not held back in talking about how strongly you feel about this defense. Is there something in particular that has allowed you to feel comfortable talking so strongly about this group?
Well, I'm not sure what the players have said. I haven't followed that, I'm not really sure what I said other than I like the depth and the speed and the maturity and the enthusiasm of our defense, which in most cases generally leads to a team that's willing to play hard for each other. And I think that's where they're at. Preparation is very, very, very important, but at some point they've got to go play. They got to get results, compete. That's what we're looking for next. That'll be the true telltale sign in the direction we go as a defense.
I think the other day I think it was on the Big 12 show that you said this to be the best defense you've had. Is there something that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, they have to go play. I think I said because of the depth and because of the experience we have, if we stay healthy, they'll have a chance to be the most successful group we've had. Now, statistically, I don't know how you find that out. I'm just going off the experience and depth that we have at this time. If they stay healthy and continue to play hard together, then they'll have a chance to be a very successful group.
Thanks, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Our final question today is going to come from Jared Alatorre from the Ocali. Go ahead, Jared.
Hey, Coach. Good morning. Speaking of what you were just talking about with the depth and the experience, how comfortable would you say having so much depth and experience out on the field helps so much, especially when there's so many unknowns about the season, dealing with football injuries and COVID? Well, I guess you could say COVID injury, but how comfortable do you feel about having so much depth and experience on the field?
Well, as I said earlier, I think that, in a season with some uncertainty based on the direction that players could go with the virus, is that when you have more mature players that have competed in game-like situations, as a coach, you feel more comfortable. Obviously, I can only speak for myself, but I don't think that any of us feel comfortable as coaches whenever we send guys out on the field that haven't played at this level for the first time. We shouldn't have many guys out there this year on the defensive side of the ball that are in that position.
Thank you.
All right, Coach, I think that'll do it for questions. While we've got the group here together, are there any last points maybe that you want to make? Maybe anything that we didn't cover?
I'm good. Let's just go play a game. Thanks, guys. I'll talk to y'all next week.